Everyone. Today, let's go through assignment number 3. This is related to statistical significance of sequence alignment. So, first question, two strings are given and there are two protein sequences. By just looking at the strings, you should understand that it's not a DNA sequence anyway. We don't have P or we don't have S in DNA sequences. Then calculate the following. Part A, expected length of the longest match for S1 and S2. So when we talk about expected length of longest match, we are talking about R. We talked about it in the lecture, and this is the corresponding formula related to that. So the only thing left to do is to know what is P, what is M, what is N. So in the base of this algorithm, it's written 1 over P. And this probability, it depends whether the sequence that we are talking about is related to DNA or protein. And as we know, if we give the same probability for all the proteins or all amino acids inside this chain, then in this case, this is 1 over 20. But if we talked about nucleotides, then it will be 1 over 4. So in this case, we should use 1 over 20. We didn't say, for example, T has higher chance to appear more than A, for example. Or, for example, for P, we can see 5% in the database. We didn't say anything about it. All of them have the same chance to appear. So 1 over 20, it means that one amino acid over all possible amino acids, which we have 20 of them. So this is the base of the logarithm. In the argument part, we have the sizes. M could be the size of the first string and N the size of the second. They are not given, but you have the whole string, so you can simply count them. So we have 13 number of letters here, and here we have 8 number of characters. So 13 by 8, that could be my argument. And in the way that you can write in the midterm exam, you should write the correct formula. For example, don't give extra redundant formulas. Like if someone gives EL inside this part A, then it will be some negative point for that. So it's very important to type or write the correct formula related to the question. And then assign the number to each one of these characters in the formula. Like, for example, for 1 over P, then you should write 1 over 20. Exactly the same format, so we understand that you assign the correct values to the correct variables or notations. And at the end here, for example, I put 3 dots to show that here you should continue and write the final answer. You can easily calculate it by using the calculator. You are allowed to do that because it will be a take-home exam. So please also calculate the final answer and write it. For item B, expected value of matches of length 3 for these 2 strings. I added this part so that it won't be misunderstanding, but even without it, we asked about expected value, not a probability. Because in some of your solutions, I observed that you have given the probability of appearing of amino acids. For example, 3 of them together, it would be 1 over 20 power 3. But we are talking about expected value, not a probability. So we should use this formula for that. So EL, it means the expected value of length 3. And this is the formula. M multiply N, the sizes of strings, and P power L, the same probability that we talked about, power the length that we are looking for. So take a look at this one. I used notations like asterisk and hat like a power. So whenever you use such notations that we don't use in mathematics, for example, you want to use it the same format in your midterm exam, because it takes time maybe to use math type in Word, so you prefer to use such notation. It is totally fine, but you should mention, for example, asterisk means multiplication. So under your solution, at least for one of them, so that we understand for all of your solutions in the midterm exam, you use the same format. That, for example, asterisk corresponds to multiplication. This notation corresponds to power, and so on. Okay, so if you do that, you're allowed to use any notations and show me that you mean that. But you should be also very careful about where you put parentheses, and it shouldn't be any problem regarding mathematics or computer science in general. Okay, so the next thing to do is just assigning values to the variables. So m, n, the other side we talked about, exactly the same, 13 multiplying 8. And p is exactly the same probability that we talked about, 1 over 20. And the length that we are looking for, the matches of length 3, we can power it by 3, and we find finally the expected value by these multiplications. And please don't forget to write the final answer. All right, part C. Assume that in our database, T amino acid occurs in sequences by relative frequency of 2%, and P amino acid occurs in sequences by relative frequency of 5%. See, the difference between item C with A and B is that now not all of them are 1 over 20. We say, for example, in this specific database, that we observe that T amino acid happened 2% of times, but we saw P appeared more than that, even more than twice. So 5% of the time it happened. So if the observed relative frequency of T, P together, like alignment, is 1 over 1,000 in our database, what's the score of aligning T with P based on Dayhoff scoring metrics approach? So we already talked about it in our lecture, how we can do it, and the formula is pretty easy. Let's go through it in details. Like for each one of the cells inside our metrics, we can calculate it by using this formula. And what we asked here is about one cell, which is related to aligning T with P. So we are trying to find the score of aligning T with P only. So I could be, for example, T, and J could be P. So when you are assigning values, here you should insert T and P here. So we understand that you assign T to I, P to J from the beginning. That's why in the solution part, it's very important to exactly specify the same format like we had in the formula, and then assign the values, because this one also, while grading, we pay attention to this. So for Q is related to aligning to amino acid, for example, T with P again, over the marginal probabilities, like for relative frequency of P or relative frequency of T. And that's what we are calculating here. The base is always 2. And here we have finally the assigning values to the notations. So we have 1 over 1,000 for the case of this relative frequency of T with P, which is 1 over 1,000. And for marginal probabilities, by the way, whenever I say probabilities, it is exactly the same as saying relative frequency. They mean the same in this format. So easily you can again use the calculator and find the final answer. So as you can see, these type of questions are pretty easy. And what we expect you to do is to provide the complete solutions in midterm and final. For the assignments, it doesn't matter because we are just practicing together. As you observe, I'm not very strict about answers. You may have so many errors, but still receive 100. But it's important to watch these videos to get ready for the exams. And now you also know that you can use such notations, but please also describe, for example, what does it mean? because maybe someone else wants to use another notation. So if I don't understand what this notation means, then you should describe. For example, asterisk sign means multiplication in mathematics, for example, because this is the way you are defining it, and it's better that someone who's grading your paper knows about it. Okay, guys, that was for today. If you have any questions, please let me know.